Hi guys, Mr. Keeney here. Next section of notes, and we're going to be talking about angles. So this is section 1.4, day 1 notes. A reminder that this unit is all about developing our foundations of geometry, and again we're going to be talking about angles. So you can see that come up here. We're going to name angles. We're going to be able to sketch angles. We're not going to be able to use a protractor and straight edge because of our virtual learning, but that's okay. Once we're in the classroom, we'll be able to do that. And number 3, I can use, or I can measure angles using a protractor. So we necessarily won't be able to measure, but we will be able to, what it says right here, classify angles, whether they're obtuse, acute, right, or straight. So the first thing is, what is an angle? An angle has 2 different rays with the same endpoint. So kind of like opposite rays, except for they're not going in the opposite direction. So to give you kind of a picture here, and I'm sure you guys have seen an angle by now, but just to break it up into our terms that we already have, there is one ray, and if I were to make another ray with the same endpoint, or the same, what would we call that, the initial point, we would get something, and there we go, now it's going to cooperate. That looks like this. So those angles have the same endpoint, or those rays have the same endpoint to create an angle, something that we're used to seeing before. And there's 3 big parts of it. There's the angle itself, and then the 2 parts to make it up, the vertex and the sides. So if I look at this angle over here to the right, and I'll go ahead and highlight it real quick for you. That angle, I'm going to give it 3 names, and then I'm going to name its vertex and its 2 sides. So the first thing we can name this angle, we can actually name it by just the vertex. We could call this angle angle E. Sometimes we won't be able to just call it just by its vertex, so what we'll do is we'll have to use all 3 letters. So I'm going to get my highlighter out here, and we'd start with D, and then follow the angle E, F, and that's actually the order I can name it, angle D, E, F. And we do have one more. We didn't have to start with D. Oh, I keep doing this wrong thing here. I need the eraser tool. There we go. I could also start with F and go E, D. So I could call this angle F, E, D. Some things to notice here when we're naming our angles. If you look at these 3-letter ones, I have the vertex, which kind of gives it away for this next part, but it is always in the middle. So when we are naming angles, we want the vertex in the middle, and the vertex is that shared initial point, or that shared endpoint. So our vertex is E, and then the 2 sides are kind of what I'm assuming you'll imagine based off our definition, are the 2 rays. So the first one we have here, and when we name rays, we always have our arrow to the right, and we start with our endpoint, which is E. The first one that I highlighted is ED, and the second one we have is EF. So we'll name it EF. So there's the kind of 3 things we want to be able to do when it comes to notation and naming and talking about the angles themselves. So I talked about, and let me highlight it, this guy up here, sometimes we won't be able to use that name, and the reason why is if you take a look down here at example 2, if I were just to say angle B, I have no idea which angle I'd be talking about. I could be talking about this big angle, I could be talking about this small angle, or I could be talking about this smaller angle. So sometimes we'll never be able to use that angle B or that angle and then just the vertex notation. Instead, we're going to have to use 3-letter notation. So let me start off by saying, okay, first let's name this bigger one. If I want to name that bigger one, I'm going to call it, and I'm going to do the way I traced. A, B, B's the vertex we'll keep in the center, A, B, D. Let's do another one. Let's get maybe another color here. How about red? I'm going to go A to B to C. Here's the second angle I see. So the A, angle A, B, C. And the last one I see, and again we'll change color, is I'll start with C. C, B, D. Angle C, B, D. Something I do want to point out is that all of these have a vertex of B, because that is their vertex there. So all of them have B in the center of their notation of their 3 letters. All right, and this is a little bit of review, and this is, there should be a review, and this is actually the last thing we have today. We have an acute angle, a right angle, obtuse, and a straight angle. So an acute angle, and I'm just going to make some sketches, nothing super official. An acute angle is something that might look like this. Oh, and there's the bell. You can hear I'm here at work. It is anywhere from 0 degrees, and we'll call this x degrees, 0 degrees to 90 degrees. So it is above 0 degrees, but less than 90. A right angle, we'll call this again x degrees. X degree is exactly equal to 90 degrees. And we will notate it, you'll see here with the little box. That one gets like a little special box to say that is a right angle, 90 degrees. Next one would be an obtuse angle. An obtuse angle is above 90. However, it is not exactly 180. Actually, it's less than 180. I shouldn't use the terminology exactly. It is less than 180. So it is between 90 and 180. And our last one here, I'll go ahead and make this a nice straight line because it is a straight angle. We got our points. And actually, I missed my points over here. Let me go add them real quick. Mr. Keen's not being good with the sketches. Our last one is a straight angle. And that one is, if we were to label this x degrees, and by x degrees I mean from here to here, x would be exactly 180 degrees. So we have 4 different types we're going to talk about. Acute, which is anywhere from 0 to 90. Right is exactly 90. Obtuse is bigger than 90 but less than 180. And straight angle is exactly 180. And that is it for these notes, the day 1 of just the classifying angles. Hopefully a little review. We will come together and talk about this a little bit more, and we will have a follow-up notes section next.